However, we are not to resist evil that is done to us. Which leads to this very famous verse. But if anyone slaps you on the right cheek, turn to him the other also. This is quite the verse. Someone attacks you and insults you. This, interestingly enough, doesn't say if somebody hits you. Specifically slaps. In the Jewish culture, slapping was almost like saying, you're not even worth balling up my fist and hitting. There's an insult in here. There's an insult. And they'd slap you with the back of the hand because you weren't worth touching with the part of the hand that you touch food with. But what was extra interesting is you are hit in the right cheek. Now, when I just did that example, I slapped like that with my right hand. Usually that's, if I'm going to hit you, which is not very likely, odds are I'm going to use my right hand because, like most people, I'm right-handed. If you're going to slap somebody in the right cheek with the back of your hand, you're going to use your left hand, right? Actually, forget that right, just left. You're going to hit him with the left. This is an extra insult. The right hand, and you'll still find this in many Middle Eastern cultures today, the right hand was what they used to pick up their food. The left hand is what they used to wipe themselves. And so using your left hand was a strong insult. This is more than just pain. It's being treated a certain way. How often do you get slapped? Probably not very often, I hope. How often do you get insulted or feel insulted by somebody? Maybe that's a little more often. And our natural reaction, of course, is to insult back. It's the natural reaction, but Jesus disallows it. What is my reaction to an insult? A slight? A feeling that someone finds me not worth the effort? Oh, but Jesus says you have more to say. And if anyone would sue you and take your tunic, let him have your cloak as well. It's a tough little verse. If somebody should rip you off, let them rip you off. This is a time where most people would just have one article of clothing, maybe one cloak and one tunic. What he's saying, if they take the shirt off your back, give them the undershirt as well. And at a time where most people only owned one, that left them naked. Better to be left with nothing. Better to be left with nothing than to be distracted by people's wrong intentions. One more. And if anyone forces you to go 1 mile, go with them 2 miles. This is the origin of the English saying, go the extra mile. If someone takes advantage of you, or if you feel that you are taken for granted, that's okay too. That's okay too. The original of this was that you could be forced to move military equipment if the army needed you. And not only should you do it with a smile on your face, you should be willing to do more and say thank you for letting me do it. Taken advantage of, taken for granted. This is hard stuff. Because the bottom line is this. Romans 12 tells us that vengeance belongs completely to God. If someone wrongs you in any way, the truly faithful believer will see it actually does not involve them. Catch that. If somebody treats me in a way that I feel insulted or left out or I've taken advantage of, it doesn't involve me. That's between them and God. Because God is the one who holds vengeance. The Christian needs to grow to the point where they're able to walk away from an insult. We need to be captivated by the kingdom of God. These are often misunderstood set of verses. Much debated. I'll give you the 1-minute history lesson. The German reformer Martin Luther talked about some of his contemporaries who would allow the lice to live on their hair and to feed on them, because they were afraid in the light of these verses to hurt the lice if they removed them. Leo Tolstoy, the famous Russian author of War and Peace, during an era of the corrupt Tsarist Russia, wrote mountains on these verses. And he came to the conclusion that what it called on us to do was to end courts and police and armies, because they prevented those who would mistreat us from actually doing it. I mentioned earlier Mahatma Gandhi. He got a little closer, I think, to the right idea, but he still missed the point. He basically came to the conclusion that turning the other cheek proved that what we stood for was truth, because we were willing to suffer for it. And if we were willing to suffer for it, it must be true. Not too long after he was assassinated, Martin Luther King came along. He studied Gandhi, but he also studied the scriptures from the point of view of a theologian. He got a little closer. He taught the world that when we face mistreatment and we respond with love, there is a redemptive quality to this. And it changes the world a little bit for the better, even if it takes time. He was right. We could almost go one step more. Go one more step. See, the bottom line is this. All those are about big events of our world. What if the world doesn't change? Does that change who we are? Those around us never become different. Do we become different? Going back to Martin Luther. Now this gets confusing because I just brought up Martin Luther, who was from the 1500s, and Martin Luther King, who was from the 1950s and 60s. Martin Luther, German, 1500s. He talked about the difference between us as individuals and the offices that we occupy in the world. Let me give an illustration to show what that means. Somebody breaks into my house, burglar, and through the course of their burglarizing, somehow they become incapacitated and I capture them. Can't imagine that happening, but anyways. They fall and get hurt, I guess, or something like that, and I get them tied up. And Martin Luther's idea basically was this, that I would, while they're injured, I tend to their wounds, I get them some food, I get some drink, while I'm waiting for the police to arrive. Because I still involve justice. The state still has a place. But it's not my job to bring justice. It is God's. I may at times be mistreated in this life. In fact, I will be. Every one of us is. I will be ignored. I will be insulted. I will be taken for granted. My efforts will be left unappreciated. I will feel left out sometimes. It will happen. People will act cruelly, and sometimes they won't even realize that they are doing it. They won't even know that they're hurting me sometimes, but it will happen. And Jesus is saying that I understand that that's not the end of the world. Because other people's actions are not my focus. Advent, when we lit this candle, and I had the three boys come up here and light it, is about light breaking into the darkness. And you know what? Our focus should always be on the light and never on the darkness. It's easy to see the darkness. It's easy to be consumed by it. And when that is all I see, we end up joining it. Unforgiveness, bitterness, consumption with hurt pulls us away from the message of the gospel. And Jesus is saying, if something wrong is done to us, it should not matter. It should never make a difference. To the point where I'm even willing to have more wrongs done to me. If I feel snubbed or allow unforgiveness or bitterness to remain in my heart, that is a great distraction. And some of those who've turned to this verse and come out with political strategies, look to Jesus and see that he was willing to suffer for his cause. And perhaps maybe we should all suffer a little bit for good causes. But as a Christian, we are not just to follow the example of the suffering of Jesus. We're actually to partake in it with him for his cause and his cause alone. To join together with Jesus. And the more we learn to have faith in Jesus and to trust him fully and to allow him to be the judge and to hold vengeance, the more it does not matter what anybody else around me is doing, even if they do it to me. Our eyes are on Jesus, not on other people and their actions. And so we understand what Romans 12 says. Repay no one evil for evil, but give thought to do what is honorable in the sight of all. If possible, so far as it depends on you, live peaceably with all. Do not let evil change who we are. Do not take our eyes off of Christ, be captivated by his kingdom.